This is your host, Gabe Morales, coming back at you with another informative episode on what I feel are the top 10 California Mexican Mafia members of all time. Adolf Champ Reynoso was born on August 21st, 1943, in Denver, Colorado. This also just happened to be the summer of the Zoot Suit riots. As a kid, Champ would go with his mom to visit Denver's Larimer Street, where many bars and restaurants were located. Even today, near Coors Field, where the Colorado Rockies baseball team currently plays, and I've visited this area many times. Champ would shine shoes as a boy for extra money. He never met his father and really never wanted to. The Reynoso family moved to Maywood, California first, and then later on moved to the Big Hazard barrio located on the east side of Los Angeles in the Ramona Gardens projects. It had a well-known reputation of living up to its name because of the widespread gang violence that made living there a big hazard for many residents. Champ's first arrest was at the age of 14 for assault with a deadly weapon. When he was 21 years of age, he escaped from the California Rehabilitation Center in Norco, California. Upon capture, he was given a 7-year added sentence for escape. Champ soon ended up at San Quentin State Prison, where he was housed with many people from Big Hazard, including fellow MM member Robert Robot Salas and many others. Champ was very close to Joe Morgan, who bridged the gap between the Mexican Mafia and the Italian-American Cosa Nostra. Reynoso and Morgan both worked with Jimmy the Weasel Fratiano, a Cosa Nostra member who later became a government informant. Morgan, as well as Reynoso, began assisting the Cosa Nostra in conducting illegal drug business in the greater Los Angeles area, for which Fratiano allegedly rewarded Champ a new red Cadillac, as well as frequent money payments. And later on, he gave Champ a pound of heroin for his assistance. According to legend, Roger Dale Pincushion Smith mouthed off to Reynoso at a California Department of Corrections reception center. Pincushion was a friend of Charles Manson and was called that name because of the numerous deep scars he had all over his body from being stabbed like a pincushion, as I verified when I met him years later at New Folsom Prison in the late 1980s before he was moved to Corcoran Prison. Pincushion Sully agreed to do Champ a favor. As Pincushion was being assaulted, Champ sung "You Belong to Me" out loud to cover up the noise of the attempted murder. The knife broke off in Smith's back, and he survived the attack, just as he did many others. This guy had like 9 lives. In 1976, Reynoso escaped from custody and spent time on the run in Mexico before returning back to the States. During the late 1970s, Reynoso committed armed robberies with an Aryan Brotherhood member named William Puppet McKinney, including one robbery in Thousand Oaks, California, that netted close to $40,000. Champ was arrested on September 7, 1977, but amazingly was let out and jumped bail and fled to his hometown of Denver. He was captured there after his wife, Linda Del Antonio, turned him into authorities. Linda was a very naive juvenile of 14 years old when she first laid eyes on Champ, and he trained her and controlled her and even made her put on a tattoo on her chest, property of Champ. After his capture, Linda became very distraught and was found dead of a sleeping pill overdose. At least that's what the coroner found. But I would not be surprised if Champ had her set up to be found that way, as he had many connections who would be able to do that. Champ was convicted of bank robbery and sent to the feds, as well as his AB crime partner, Puppet. He was involved in ordering the 1978 Lompoc prison murder of MM member Thomas Hapo Trejo, who was from a barrio named Clover, the same gang that Blackie Segura was from, who was involved in the murder with other Emeros. Years later, in 1983, McKinney paid back a favor to Reynoso when he murdered inmate Greg Keffer, in part for cheating Champ out during a drug transaction. People didn't burn Champ and get away with it, and he ordered several other murders in the BOP with similar circumstances. In 1981, Champ was transferred to the new Marion Max security prison along with other Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood members. In that same year, inmate Robert Chappelle was murdered at Marion. Evidence showed that this was a Mexican Mafia and Aryan Brotherhood contract. Chappelle was strangled by Aryan Brotherhood member Clayton Fountain and Thomas Silverstein because he had a confrontation earlier with Mexican Mafia member Martin Cato Vargas because Chappelle had insulted him. Aryan Brotherhood members sent a message to Barry Mills, who was also covered in my top 10 AB of all time, and stated that they got the okay for Chappelle to be killed via Champ and Vargas. When the U.S. Penitentiary ADX in Florence, Colorado opened in November 1994, Reynoso was considered a prime candidate for being housed there. It was while housed there that Champ sanctioned the murder of longtime Emero Manuel Tati Torres, who was stomped to death in April 2005. The murder was pinned on Mexican Mafia member Richard Chuco Santiago, who I also had at New Folsom Prison back in the early 1990s. Until his death on November 21st, 2018, many prison gang experts considered Reynoso to be the overall head of the Mexican Mafia in the federal BOP. Prior to his death, he had groomed his protege and street ambassador Manuel Cricket Jackson, also from Hazard, to conduct business for him. And Cricket was considered a co-commissioner of a three-man commission consisting of Champ, Blackie Segura, and Willie Bobo Giovea. Champ died in custody. Benjamin Topo Peters was Native American, but grew up in El Hoyo Soto, which is an area also located on the east side of Los Angeles. He was born on January 12, 1941, and was an original Mexican Mafia member, having been inducted while he was in the Youth Authority at DVI in 1958. He paroled after a year and was caught on an assault case in 1959. Shortly thereafter, Topo began hanging out in Baja California, working for Harry Buckley, who was a close associate of Joe Morgan. Buckley operated out of a Rosarito, Mexico hotel and used a major drug connection with people like Robert and Helen Hernandez. And their dope was moved by Mexican Mafia members out on the streets in Southern California. Topo was extradited from Mexico under some rather dubious means by Detective Robert Moco Morel, who was my mentor. Moco told me that they basically fooled Mexican authorities into releasing Topo, and they placed him in the trunk of their car as they crossed the border. When customs officials asked if they had anything to declare, Topo was kicking in the trunk, and they flashed their badge, and with a wink and a nod, they were on their way. When Topo went on trial, he protested this, what he called was a kidnapping from Mexico, and tried to use that as an excuse to get out to beat his case. The judge listened to his story and asked Detective Morel if that in fact happened. And Morel said, "Yes, sir, it did." And the judge sentenced Topo to prison, and with a blow of his gavel said, "And next time, Mr. Peters, I suggest you get a better defense attorney." Topo was sent to Folsom Prison, where he took this iconic picture with Joe Morgan, Cheyenne Cadena, and MA founder Roybal Flores, amongst others. After Joe Morgan died, Topo was considered by many to be the top guy in the MA, and he in fact boasted himself that he was the number one guy and was very cocky and controlling. Some of his supporters in the Mariposa, code name for the Mafia, were Mariano Chuy Martinez, Rene Box Enriquez, Henry Indio Carlos, and Albert Boxer Tolento. These members feuded with other factions in the 1990s, namely the Grajeda brothers from La Rana and Ruben Tupi Hernandez from the Ontario Black Angels and his supporters, as I covered in a previous episode. In September 1991, Mexican Mafia member Sal Buenrostro was hit by Topo Peters and Box Enriquez in the LA County Jail attorney visiting area. He was hit 27 times in open view of witnesses, and when they thought he was dead, they dropped their weapons and turned themselves over to jail officers, which furthered their rep. Topo was housed in New Folsom Prison, where I worked in 1992, and it is said that he wanted to kill Edward James Olmos because of his portrayal of his good friend Joe Morgan and the fictional murder of his friend Cheyenne Cadena. Topo also sanctioned the murder of David Loco Gallegos, who was killed by Boxer Enriquez, and it is said that he okayed the murder of longtime MA member Victorio Murillo based on bogus info. This killing was just one mentioned in the 1995 RICO case against La M. Topo died in custody of cancer in 2001. Ernest Ronald Kilroy Roybal was born on March 3rd, 1939, and hailed from the Boyle Heights barrio called White Fence. In his childhood years, he recalled many local veteranos fighting, drinking, and doing drugs, and he wanted to be just like them. A lot of people know him by Kilroy, but don't know they also had another nickname of Suge, Due to his criminal ways, he soon wound up in the California Department of Corrections and joined La M. In 1972, the first Monterey Park Gang Task Force was formed to investigate prison murders that were happening out in the streets and in prison. The first one to come to light was the killing of Pachi Alvarez, who was found gunned down near a park bathroom in Monterey Park. It was later determined that he was killed by MM members Kilroy and another ruthless member named Alfie Sosa, who I'll talk about here shortly. Kilroy was finally busted and later arrested and housed at the CIM Reception Center in 1977 and ended up being at Old Folsom, where he is well known for being violent. It is said that he was involved in the murder of an NF member named William Gonzalez in May of 1977. He also murdered Armando Hovey on April 2nd, 1979, and was involved in many other murders for which he was never convicted for. Longtime Mexican Mafia member Mo Farrell was a major hitman for La M and well respected by many, but he ended up being put in a hat for numerous violations, including slapping another canal, Alfie Sosa. But I was told that another major reason for this by a CDC program administrator at Folsom and a well-respected captain, as well as some former MA, that it was mostly due to his refusing Joe Morgan's order of no peace with the blacks, because Mo had agreed to make a truce with the Black Guerrilla family. After the Father's Day massacre at Folsom Prison in 1982, this hit was carried out by Danny Boy Pina and Stump Valencia. He survived his attack, but was sent to the UC Davis Medical Center, where he abruptly pulled out his life support. Nico Velasquez was also a shot caller at Folsom Prison. He was killed at Tehachapi for his role in the Folsom peace talks with blacks. This hit was carried out by Gabriel Sleepy Huerta, and the third leader at Folsom at the time to agree to peace with the blacks was said to be Kilroy. He was hit by Huerta also at Tehachapi Shoe. It is said that Kilroy also got in trouble with Joe Morgan for refusing to hit a BGF member who was transferred down from Folsom, and allegedly told Joe, well, if you really wanted to hit him, why didn't you do it yourself? Papa Joe was not amused. Kilroy was put on free status by 1989 and dropped out to become a Christian in 1993. When he was paroled, he went on the speaking circuit, preaching and rapping to young people not to be involved with the gang lifestyle and not to sin, and to learn and read the Bible. In 2021, a movie was produced called Kilroy, based on his life, that was written by Pete Bollinger of Police and Fire Publishing and directed by his brother, Chris Bollinger, starring actor Wilson Ramirez as Kilroy, Jose Santana as Shai Cadena, and Brian Eric Johnson as Joe Morgan. The film's executive producer was YouTuber Paul Thumps Mori, who also played a supporting actor role named Steve Troublesome Castillo. Alfred Richie Sosa was born on June 23, 1943, and claimed an ovario called Happy Valley. In fact, Happy was his first moniker, although Evil would have probably been a better one. In the 1970s, Alfie was sent to federal prison and sent to the McNeil Island prison in Washington State. I actually knew some of the convict pintos in Seattle at El Centro de la Raza who would go visit Mexican Mafia and other prison gang members there at McNeil Island when it was a federal BOP facility. Alfie's crime partner was Alfred Cuate Jimenez, who hailed from El Hoyo Maravilla, and they served their sentences together at McNeil Island. One day, Cuate asked Alfie to kill him if he ever used heroin again. Sosa actually did kill Cuate with the assistance of Güero Shyrock several years later on January 22nd, 1977, when he was least expecting it, and after he broke his promise not to use dope again. Others say that wasn't the reason that Cuate was killed, but that it was ordered by Robot Salas. Regardless, Alfie was a killer with no internal compass. He enjoyed killing and could easily be classified as being a serial killer. On January 16, 1977, Monday Varela helped Alfie kill Isidro Fritros Trujillo, and another Mexican Mafia member named Gilbert Gil Roybal was killed in Fresno by Daniel Choco Monteano and Alfie. Monday was actually wiretapped on March 2nd, 1977, discussing with Chispa Sandoval a plot to kill Mike Delia. Mike Delia's wife, Ellen, was killed, and Alfie was one of the executioners. It got really crazy in the 1970s, as I was informed by Robert Moco Morel, who was once head of the gang task force, and he actually stopped Alfie along with Monday Varela, but at that time he was off duty and doing liquor control at bars. When he did this, he would not carry his weapon. So when Alfie and Varela were stopped by Officer Joe Delia, it was found that they both had weapons. Joe handed one of the weapons to Moco, as they were both scared that these guys might try to kill him. Well, unfortunately, the murder weapon of Ellen Delia, then, as part of criminal evidence, had been destroyed. And this was a huge mess, and Joe Delia and Moco Morel were accused of covering up for the murders. Actually, it was just a easily explained blunder. They were actually charged with this, and it was the longest trial in California at the time, and they both got off. Both Moco Morel and Delia went on to work for other law enforcement agencies, but their reputation had been damaged in California. This is all explained in Morel's book, The Traffic Stop. Louie Araujo was born in 1944 and was a very influential original Mexican Mafia member from El Hoyo Maravilla. But he became very irate after they started because they started attacking fellow Chicanos, especially some of his homeboys from Maravilla. Thus, he actually supported the Nuestra Familia Mexicana, including helped them write their first constitution after they started in 1965. He is also involved in peace talks with the Nuestra Familia in the late 60s and early 70s. So this is interesting to me. He is the only guy that I know that was Mexican Mafia, ended up being an NF sympathizer, but then years later was considered to be revalidated as an MA member by my friend and SSU agent Robert Marquez because he was running drug operations in the Sacramento, California area. Louie's power always came from his personal dope connections and knowing many convicts throughout the system and throughout California, especially those from Maravilla. In fact, he also was one of the main guys involved in the Maravillas refusing to pay taxes to the Mexican Mafia when the MA edict came out, and was influential in getting the green light taken off. I could say so much more about some of these guys, but it'd be really hard to prove. But there it is. Those are my top 10 Mexican Mafia members of all time. Let me know if you have any others and why that is in the comment section. Thanks for watching. This is Gabe Morales signing off. Gangsters, cops, and politicians.
Mm-hmm.